the Jews are going back home, right? Cyrus, the king of Persia, let them go home to rebuild the temple of Jerusalem, right? We even talked about how Jews who actually wanted to go back to the Jewish heritage. The Jews who came home said, no, we're not going to do that, right? You're not going to help because, one, you haven't been following our, God's laws, and two, Cyrus told us to do it, not you, right? So then we bounced over to China, where we're seeing some reform. Okay, I don't know why the screens are not on, but we talked about one man. We're talking about two of them, but we talked about Confucius, right? And how he has this certain ideas on how to. I can start it here. On how he wants to end war and conflict, because there's a lot of conflict going on right now in this time in China, right? We're looking at 500 to 400 BC. Am I on slide? What slide is that? 48? Yeah, that's right. He wants to teach everybody to just kind of. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and. Well, here are some of his sayings, right? And a lot of these we said come from the Bible, right? Like his saying there, everything has its own beauty, but not everyone sees it, right? To me, that tells me, well, God made everything for a purpose, right? Even the mosquitoes have a purpose on this planet, even though we all hate them, right? I even swatted one out from getting into the car today, right? But someone finds those animals fascinating, right? And that's great. And we need to learn about them, right? The one where it says, wheresoever you go with all your heart. That, guys, that's a Bible verse. That's in Colossians 3, right? Where it's Paul is saying, right? Work at it with all of your heart, no matter what it is, right? So there's a lot of similarities to what he's saying here. Even the one, how about that one? Respect yourself and others will respect you. What does that sound like? The golden rule, yeah. I think even this last one, forget injuries, never forget kindness. To me, that reminds me of the Good Samaritan, where he's helping them out of kindness, even though they're from different parts, groups of people who don't really care for each other, right? All right, so he's trying to get rid of all this conflict and struggle through more like teaching morals, right? Teaching morals. This is Confucius. Here are some of his six core values, right? And if you look at the screen there, like, what is the common theme here that you see from what he's trying to teach? You don't have to read the Chinese words in that column. You can just read the other one if you can, right? Honesty, trustworthiness. He says etiquette, love within the family, loyalty to state and authority, benevolence, okay, righteousness. So what's kind of a theme that he's trying to teach here? Fruits of the Spirit, right? Exactly. And he might know of the Christian faith, right? Or not, I mean, the Jewish faith at this time, because Christianity is not around yet, right? So maybe those had an influence on him. I don't know. But we do know that even though people who are outside of God are still trying to find that moral compass, right, on what's good in this world, right? He never actually got to reach his goal. His goal was to become in a high position in China, but it never really happened. So unfortunately for him, that didn't work out. Now we're going to talk about a guy who's coming at this from a different angle, Sun Tzu, right? Confucius was more of the morals, right, and like Danielle said, the Chinese version of the fruits of the spirit, right? Well, Sun Tzu, right? He's a military guy. I think we all know who Sun Tzu is, right? Sun Tzu. What's he famous for? The Art of War, right? His book, The Art of War. Okay. Again, right? There's a lot of warfare going on during this time between these different provinces. So he's like, hey. The best way to end war is to win it quickly, right? You want to win it quickly as possible with power, force, and discipline, right? Here's one thing that he said. I know that's hard to read, and I'm not a very good photographer because I took that from my phone, from the book, so mind the crookedness. He says here, I think this is from his book, Art of War. It says, when you engage in actual fighting, if victory is long in coming, the men's weapons will grow dull and their ardor will be dampened. If you lay siege to a town, you will exhaust your strength, and if the campaign is protracted, the resources of the state will not be equal to the strain. Never forget, when your weapons are dulled, your ardor dampened, your strength exhausted, and your treasure spent, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your extremity. Then no man, however wise, will be able to avert the consequences that must ensue. Win it quickly, right? He's saying there, quick and decisive conquest, right, not like the slow and steady wins the race, right, is the best way to deal with conflict. Hit it in the mouth right when it happens, and then that way it's done, right? Also believe that the generals should lead the country. Well, why? Why would the generals be better at that, he thinks? Well, because they were soldiers once. They can take orders. They're disciplined, right? All that stuff he thinks will bring peace, right? We've had several presidents who were military men, right? Eisenhower, Washington, right? Grant, right? We had a lot, and they were good presidents, I'd say. Washington, to me, is the best, right? But that's my opinion. All right. So, again, we have differing perspectives here, but they're both trying to go to the same goal here, right? Confucius would like peace through a universal moral order, and Sun Tzu is peace through structure, order, and discipline, and a decisive victory. Okay. Both perspectives, though, reinforce the Judeo-Christian beliefs that we are all created equal in God's eyes. We are all created in the image of God, and He is moral and ethical by nature, right? That's what both of these perspectives show us. And again, that even if you're outside of God, mankind will always look for something moral and ethical, right? That's why you see all those gods popping up in like Canaan, all that kind of stuff, Egypt, because they're trying to find that moral compass, okay? All right, so these men tried to find the solution to conflict through education of moral philosophy and discipline and strength, right? But where does it actually come from? Where can we actually find the solutions to the world's problems? Bible, yeah. Bible, Chuck? That's right? Okay, yeah. Yep. So if you look at Romans 3:21, it says, but now apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known, to which the law and prophets testify. What does that mean? Right, Joel? What does that mean? Oh, he's giving it to you, Joel.
I have to answer that.
Oh, I didn't know. I just you always ask, what does that mean?
Because when I teach, that's all I ever ask is, what does that mean?
But he refused to answer.
So that is from the NIV. Yeah, we cannot rely on mankind, right? I was going to read from what version is this? Contemporary English version. This one's usually pretty straightforward. Where did it go? It's not giving me. Wait, 21, right? Yeah, 3:21. It says, wait, I'm in Proverbs. I'm not in Romans. That would make it an issue. 3:21. In this version, it says, "Now we see how God does make us acceptable to Him. The law and the prophets tell how we become acceptable, and it isn't by obeying the law of Moses." This is what this version says. So yeah, the law of Moses is still there, but whose law do we follow now? God's law, yeah, the one that Jesus told us to follow. I don't think we should ignore those at all. But still, so the only hope for dealing with the world, right, and all of its wickedness is only through Jesus, right? So let's go do one of our questions here. What are some of the differences between the teachings of Confucius and teaching of the Bible?
Hang on, Dad.
Say, for one thing, the Bible's inspired of God, and Confucius is not.
Yeah, he's just a man, right? Where did all the words of the Bible come from? It was God. It's God breathed, right? Anybody else? What are some of the differences between Confucius and the Bible? Carlin's thinking. I don't know if you want to get ready to come up here or not. Well, I mean, we can go a little bit back. Well, I showed those 6 different things, right? So, Jim?
When we look at what we're talking about here, no matter how wise the person is, such as Confucius and these things, we always have to rely on God, because in the end results of it, He is always right. They can be sincere in the thing, but they can be wrong where God cannot be wrong.
That's true. God's never wrong. Mike, you have anything? Huh? You said what I said. Okay, yeah. Two minds, right? 2 minds. Yeah, Jesse. I know, right?
I think a lot of what Confucius taught is what men can do to make things better, and the majority of the things that we see in the New Testament are what God can do to make men better. I think that's the difference.
I think I was about to say similar. To me, it's interesting, though, even though they didn't have Christianity there, seemed like a leader was pulled up to help bring the people to do righteousness, at least. So to me, Confucius was bold in a time where there's 6 continents fighting, 6 countings of China fighting each other. He's stepping up and say, look, we got to change how we look at things. So to me, in a time of no Christianity, he should be honored that way, because God had to use him to bring him up.
Exactly, right?
Well.
God will use people who are not, Jewish or Christian, faith to do his work, right? And we're going to see that in next chapter, chapter 7, when we talk about Alexander the Great, right? He did a lot for God without even knowing it. Anybody else? Brian, nothing? Okay. Nothing? Austin? Okay, real quick. We can wait. I mean, I'm not on a time schedule or anything, so it's not.
I'm just too slow, sorry. I'm thinking about, I think in Romans 3, when it's talking about when people who are not under the law do what the law says, what does that actually mean to God? So I'm sorry, this is a very half-baked thought, so I'm going to give this back. But yeah, basically, God can, what we were talking about, God can use people that are not necessarily under the law to bless other people. I mean, God still loved all the people in China back before the gospel could ever be preached to them. You know, I mean, he's that big and he's that outside of time that, I mean, sorry. Here you go.
You're good. I mean, I think Jesse's right. He's trying to use this man to open the minds of the Chinese people until, Christianity got to China, right? I think she's right there. All right.
Hey, Logan.
Yeah.
So I think something else to think about here. No expert on Confucius and love. I mean, I know he talked about relationships and man to man and stuff like that, but us to a higher being, I mean, we're supposed to be all about love and loving God and having love in our heart. So we're, as Christians, we're very heart focused. What's in the heart? What does the heart mean? The heart of the matter. Being in Christ, associated with him being in our heart. And of course, that's why we had a Old Testament law that wasn't heart-based. God was trying to make it that way. Okay, now we got New Testament-based, all about the heart. So I think that's some differences there too.
I like that. Thank you. All right, now we're going to jump back to Greece. Okay, we talked about two guys who tried to reform China, right? Now we're going to look at some reform in Greece. Okay, so there's after the Persians were kicked out, right, in 480 BC. You remember who was the Persian king when this happened? He's mentioned in the Bible. Xerxes, right? So Cyrus let all the Jews go home, right? And then Darius, right? He attacked Greece. He died. His son picked it up, Xerxes, right? He picked it up, but Greece was able to repel them. And so there's a little bit of unity here in the Greek city-states. They're not a country yet, right? They're just different city-states, but they're all thinking relatively as one, right? This is called Greece's golden age, when the city-states were working really close together. And this is where we see Socrates come up, okay? Socrates. So he's actually one of the three really, really famous Greek philosophers, right? There's Socrates, there's Plato, and there's Aristotle. Okay, you guys know who Aristotle taught? Alexander the Great, right? Alexander. Next chapter, though. That's in the next chapter. Okay, so Socrates was born in Athens in 469 BC under the leadership of Pericles. Pericles is a strong leader. He's a good statesman, a good orator. He's a general, right? Again, with the general stuff like that. He's also a pretty smart guy. He knows what he's talking about, okay? And he is really wanting Athens, right? Again, they're not a whole country at this time. They're just city-states. He wants Athens to pursue excellence in learning. I like that guy. He's good. I like that. So this is supposed to be Pericles right there in that picture, right? It's supposed to be him right there talking to all those people. So after the Persian Wars, okay, come on now, click here. Athens used their knowledge of ships, okay? Because if you guys recall back with the Battle of Thermopylae, right, the Spartans were trying to slow down the Persians by leading them down that narrow pathway, right? So the navy could get there. Whose navy? Athens, right? So Athens are really good. They have a really strong navy, okay? And they use this navy to actually create a really, really strong merchant armada, okay? And they really, really reached out for an extensive international trade, right? While the Spartans are actually kind of going backwards. They are going back to more of their agrarian economy, okay? And starting to kind of get they're starting to plateau, right? So they're seeing, and there's also this group called the Sophists come up. There's this group of philosophers like Socrates, right? That what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to just understand the world, okay? They want to know the nature of the universe, purpose of life, right? And other types of metaphysical ideas. So again, right, people outside of God are trying to what? Find understanding, right? Okay. So this is kind of their trade map, right? You can so the orange in the middle is obviously kind of the Greek territories. All the red is their extent of their trade. So they're reaching a long way. They're reaching a long way. Okay? And then here are the Sophists right there. Okay? Ladies, avert your eyes. There's some scantily dressed men in there. Okay? Joel, you too? All right. So Socrates, look at here. Try to catch up. Okay. Came of an age in his Socrates came of age in this environment of peace, freedom, and learning, though his own origins were comparatively humble. His father's a stone carver, which they think Socrates also did a little bit of, okay? And his mother was a midwife, okay? But Socrates started to think really, really deeply about things, right? He's a provocative philosopher. Okay, he actually gained a lot of following, right? And one of those followers was Plato. Okay, was Plato. So during this, going backwards. That's just a picture, but still. All right, so we start to see the start of the Peloponnesian War. Okay, can anyone say that 5 times fast? Peloponnesian. Yeah. This is mainly between. Well, it's between Athens and their followers versus Sparta and their followers. Okay, and Socrates actually fought in this war, but we'll get there. I know there's not really a whole lot of scripture here, but just keep in mind, this is all happening when the Jews are coming back home and they're rebuilding the temple, okay? So that's not just what's going on all in the world. We see things in China and things in Greece going on at the exact same time. This is what this book does, right? So according to Thucydides, okay, yes, I can pronounce that, Thucydides, war was caused by this underlying fear from the other Greek city-states, like Sparta, that Athens is getting too powerful, okay? Because Pericles helped that. He really encouraged his people to reach greatness, right? So again, they have a strong navy, okay? They actually have a defense alliance with Corcyra. This is a big deal because Corinth is supported by Sparta, and Corcyra is supported by, who do you think? Athens, right? Okay, and again here, Athens renewed alliances with Rhegium and Laotini. They're actually in the very, very southern part of Italy, in Sicily, Sicily area. And who are they more supported by? Athens, yeah, Athens. Because they're really helping them get a stronger hold of the food supply in the Greek area. Okay, so Sparta doesn't like that very much. Okay, so it leads to these wars here, these Peloponnesian wars. Okay, so Corinth again sought the help from Sparta to stop Athenian development, and a coalition of anti-Athenian forces attacked Athens with Socrates among the defenders. So he's actually an Athenian soldier during this war, right? But Athens loses the war, okay? I mean, Sparta's they're strong, right? They're all about raising their kids to fight. We talked about that a long time ago, right? Where they're all about that war mindset, okay? Not so much on the thinking part. So it's really brains versus brawn here, right? And the brawn won. So, but since Athens lost, it kind of puts everything back a little bit, okay? Because now Athens are practically slaves to Sparta, but this led to widespread poverty among these city-states, okay? So Athens, come on, click here. Athens' loss really put a setback on Socrates' work, okay? Which got him really frustrated. He's really frustrated. Does anyone know about him personally? Well, obviously not personally, but know a little bit more about Socrates? He's actually kind of a rude guy. He was rude. He was brash. He was impatient. And when I read about this too, he said he's famously ugly. So I don't know. Really ugly, but really buff? Yes, probably, right. So before the war, the sophists challenged the concepts of morality, religions, and human virtue, because their focus was more on the human freedom, right? More of the individuality, independence, things like that, right? And less on focusing on serving the gods, right? Their Greek gods. But a lot of Athenians wanted to go back to those polytheistic ways. Okay, so but Socrates continued to encourage people, right? And his thinking is really progressive at this time, right? Okay, he was charged by the courts with impiety and corruption of the youth. Is this the first time that we've heard of teachers being attacked by the government? No, right? This has happened before, right? History doesn't repeat, but history, what? Rhymes. It rhymes, right? Okay, so he was convicted and sentenced to death by an Athenian jury. Okay, he was sentenced to drink a poisonous hemlock drink. Hemlock. So here are some of the symptoms here. So, so your pupils will dilate. You'll get dizzy and trembling, and you'll be trembling, which is followed by slowing of the heartbeat, paralysis of your central nervous system, muscle paralysis, and death due to respiratory failure. Does this sound pleasant to you? Look, I'd rather go quick. I don't want to sit there and suffer, because this takes occurs 20 minutes to 3 hours after you take it. So not fun. And there's him right there. Obviously, I added the bottoms up part. It's not part of the painting. Okay. But that's him there with his followers. Okay. So Socrates actually never wrote anything down. Do you know why? He's illiterate. He is illiterate. And also, he would rather talk to people than, he says that you learn more from talking to people rather than reading about it. That's what he's saying, okay? Now, we're going to kind of get into some actual modern day teaching philosophy here, teaching strategies here. So, but his student Plato wrote down all of his things, okay? Kind of like Jesus' disciples did, right? They would write down things, okay? His greatest contribution was his method of seeking the truth, okay? In his method, the teacher asks provocative questions to prompt students to fully examine and understand what they believe to be true. In other words, truth is better discovered in dialogue rather than a sit and get, lecture. It's kind of what this is right here, I guess. In reading it, right? So, Brian was the teacher. Carlin was. Anybody else here? Oh, yeah. Debbie here. Okay. What is this called? What do teachers use that is actually named after Socrates? That the teacher takes a step back and lets students talk about it and discuss. Anyone know what the Socratic seminar, yeah, Socratic method, right? So we use this today, okay? So with this here, it's more important to teach students to think for themselves than to fill their heads with the, quote, right answers, right? You can tell them, but then you make them ask, well, why is this right, right? Why do you think that, okay? You think, see, and look how famously ugly he is, right? That's just his bust, and look at it, ugh, all right? So, he says here, I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only teach them to think. Anyone have any comments about that? Did Jesus do this?
Yeah, he did it a lot through parables.
Parables?
Oh, hang on, Jim.
Might be a quick one. All through the scriptures, God is telling people to listen. And over and over, as I study the scriptures, this is what I see, to listen. And if you don't listen, then you make up your own thinking, you're never going to succeed. But if you do what God tells you by listening, many went off astray by doing their own thing. So I think listening should be up there on the very top. But you have to know who you're listening.
I think a good example of when Jesus did this was when they asked who was their neighbor. He didn't explain who their neighbor was. He told them the parable and then asked them to conclude who their neighbor was.
I like that.
Anybody else? Mike, nothing? Oh, okay, yeah. Again, great minds, right? Great minds.
Answering a question with a question. I was just going to say he answered a lot of questions with questions, and that's the method.
That's actually, that's just a teacher thing as well, right? Hey, how do I find this? Well, how do you find that, right? Is this answer 12? I don't know, is it? Show me, right? That's kind of what a good teacher would do. They respond with a question in return, right? Debbie knows, right? What do I have next here? All right, we can probably finish with this one here. All right, so Socrates' continual pursuit of truth and endless questioning drove some to better understanding of the world, while it drove others to hate him. I don't want to think, right? And know anybody like that? I know a lot of students who do that. I don't want to think. It's too hard. Too bad. Nonetheless, his quest for understanding continues to inspire us today. Now, I added this verse up here, Proverbs 23:12. I actually have this in my as my signature in my school emails. And it says this here, Proverbs 23:12. Apply your heart to instruction and your ears to words of knowledge. What does that mean, Joel? Am I steal that again? What does that mean? How might that apply to Socrates, but also, obviously, God said this, right? God inspired Solomon to write this. So, what does that mean? Apply your heart to instruction and your ears to words of knowledge. Hold on, there we go.
Okay. 2 Timothy 2:15 comes to my mind. Study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth.
Yeah. Anybody else? Think and listen before you speak. Okay? Yeah. From a teaching standpoint, I saw this as always getting better at your craft, right? I'm never going to be the perfect teacher, right? But I will keep doing my best, right? It says here to in your ears to words of knowledge, meaning I always need to take in feedback, right? How to make myself better. We're never going to be full experts on the Bible, right? So what do we have to do? We got to keep studying. We get together, we study together, we learn together, right? We give our different perspectives on things. And to me, that's how we get stronger, right? In the scriptures. Any last comments, questions, or rude remarks towards me? Quiet. All right, we're going to stop right there. Next week, our first question will be, how has ancient Greece impacted us today? Okay, we'll start with that next week. Thank you.